Africa. Yeah, I'm recording.
Well, hi everybody. Tony Park here. You may not have noticed because I didn't say anything just yet. I had a very unusual thing happen to me last week. I had two books come out on the same day on July 28th. There was my book, King of Beasts, which I'm sure you're sick of me talking about, which has come out all around the world. But there was actually another book released on the same day that I had a hand in, that I co-wrote. And it's a book called School for Life, also set in Africa. And it's the story, I would say life story, because she's got a lot of her life to go. But the story so far of Annabelle Chauncy, and here she is. Hello, Annabelle.
Hi, Tony. Good to see you.
And there's and show us your book again, School for Life.
You're
So there you go. So
being very
behind the
modest,
scenes.
very modest in saying that you had a hand in, writing, did a very good job of writing.
Yeah, so a few months ago, I was approached by my publishers, Pam McMillan, to say, would I like to write a book with somebody else, somebody who spent a lot of time in Africa? And I said, sure. And it was Annabelle here. And it was a little bit unusual because they were thinking when Annabelle wanted someone to co-write her book with her, that they would get a female writer to work with her. And they tried a few, didn't they, Annabelle? But nobody wanted to go to Africa.
Yeah, I think everyone was scared of Africa, but it worked out so well. Even I was a little bit unsure about having a male co-author, particularly when you're talking about your personal life and your personal history. But I think it works so well. One, because you've got such a deep appreciation of and have spent so much time in Africa, but also because actually there are a lot of synergies between the lives that we've had. And, we were really able to come together, kind of having walked through some similar experiences in our life as well.
Yeah, very much so. And yeah, so my publisher said, "You, why don't you have a look at this since you're based in Africa?" And yeah, as Annabelle just said, there's certainly a lot of synergies there. And I think what helped was the fact that, we had a lot of common ground, although we kind of work and operate in different parts of the continent. A lot of the continent's problems are similar in places that we visit. So the short story with Annabelle's book is Annabelle is an amazing, dynamic woman who builds schools in Africa. Well, she and her team build schools in Uganda. And this is the story of how she got to go there. So, Annabelle, I'll start just by asking you the question that everybody asks me. Why Africa? How did you end up there?
Yeah, no, good question. I mean, I think you'll share with me in saying that Africa really gets under your skin. I was studying to be a lawyer and I wanted to use my law skills to make a difference. And so when I was halfway through my law degree, I decided to sign up to go and volunteer in Kenya, and spent some time in Kenya before being evacuated across the border into Uganda. But I think, what I experienced in Africa was just a true, magical place full of color and hope and ambition, and so many young people who don't have the resources that they need to meet their potential, particularly through education.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for a lot of our viewers or people that follow both of us will have a good level of knowledge. But for those who don't, people tend to think of Africa as one place. It's not a country. It's many, many different countries, and within those countries, many different cultures, and also many different problems. And I think for the benefit of perhaps of my Southern African readers, we obviously we know that there's problems in the public education system in countries like South Africa and Zimbabwe and this part of the country, this part of the continent, I should say.
Mm.
And we tend to think of them as under-resourced. But you went to Kenya and then across the border, as you said, into Uganda. Just give us a snapshot for what the situation is like in, say, a government-run rural public school
Yeah.
or even one on the outskirts of the city.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you go maybe 1 or 2 kilometers outside the radius of Kampala city, the quality of education being provided is very, very poor. So most children will be learning in nothing more than a basic structure, which could be a mud hut or it could be, brick or a semi-permanent structure. Most children won't have access to a desk, pens or pencils. The teacher will be turning up with very few learning resources. And most young people, particularly from the rural areas of Uganda, are turning up on empty stomachs, having walked between sort of 5 or 10 kilometers every day just to get to this very poor learning environment. But they still do so with a smile on their face because they know that education has the power to break them free from the cycle of poverty. And that's really what was the most inspiring part for me was the fact that actually, there's a will and a desire to be educated. So if we can remove some of the barriers to participation and increase the standard of education, then, the children are there and very keen to learn.
Yeah, and I mean, I was lucky enough to go to Uganda, and I found it, when we look at some of those government schools that you're supporting, we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, it is quite confronting, and also it's a beautiful country. It's a great country to
Mm.
travel in, but also there's a lot of problems there. I mean, the poverty in
Yeah.
parts of the country is next level. Things that even people in South Africa take for granted, like electricity. Okay, not everybody has running water all the time here, but yeah, I mean, like at the village level. Also, people are still living a very tough life, a very hard life without access to clean drinking water, with no electricity. I think in the village that you ended up in as well too. So
Yeah.
we don't want to give away everything in the book, but the book is about Annabelle's journey and how she wanted to make a difference and do something. And when you set out to go and try and tackle this issue of building schools, what was your philosophy at the time? How did you want to go
Yeah.
about doing?
I mean, I think beginner's mind was really powerful. Myself and my co-founder looked around and sort of really struggled to see how local people were being involved in the development that was taking place. And so the principle or ethos of the schools from the very beginning was that they would be run by local people for local people. And obviously, there are a lot of kind of ways where, you could feel perhaps that it would be quicker or easier to go over and do things yourself. And I'm sure it would have been a lot of the time. However, the sustainability just isn't there. And how do you ensure that, the schools are truly community owned and that the students are looking up to role models who are their teachers? So really what we did from the very outset was ensure that every single component of the schools and the community uplift projects were led by local people.
Yeah, and it's a really, really good book, I think from my point of view, good story for even anybody who's interested
Yeah.
either in, maybe getting involved in the NGO sector, or wanting to support it or donate it, to look at the way things are done, not coming into a country and imposing your will or thinking, hey, you people don't know what you're doing. I'm going to show you how to do it. So you get a very strong sense that this is a good ethical way for an NGO to operate, and indeed for people to support other people. I mean, the wildlife NGOs that I support are the ones that just do that. They support existing projects. But
Yeah.
yours is one that brought in the support of the community, and you very much get that story coming through in the book and
Mm.
through the lives of some of the people in the village of Kutuso. Just give us a little snapshot of Kutuso, where you ended up
Yeah.
building your first.
I mean, off the beaten track, when we first arrived there was no electricity, no running water, very, very quiet kind of town with very few, I guess, resources or even shops. So no schools within proximity of where we purchased land. And I guess really high levels of alcoholism, largely subsistence farmers. And most of the parents, I guess, had resigned themselves to the fact that their children would probably never go to school because there just wasn't a school close enough by. So what we were dealing with was, again, a community that wanted education for their children, however, didn't have the means to be able to send their children via transport to get to the nearest government school. And for those who were able to travel to government schools, the government schools in our area were very dilapidated as well, and lacking staff, trained teachers. Again, nutrition is a big barrier towards children being able to be healthy, to grow and concentrate and learn. So we were working, I guess, from the perspective of recognizing that we needed to make sure that the whole child's needs were met when we entered the community.
Yeah, and so you start off, you and your co-founder, building a small primary school,
Yep.
just a couple of
It was
rooms, and you
tiny, a
and
few
you
rooms.
it's tiny, and you grow. And I think you've used a line in the book about learning to fly the plane while you're while it's in the air almost,
Yeah.
but then I think also you then, as you've touched on, then when you're talking about the whole child, you start to learn about some of the other problems facing people in rural Uganda, like things like gender-based violence and things like
Yes.
that. Some of that
Yeah.
must have been quite.
Yeah, and I mean, gender-based violence is a big one, witchcraft, another really big one. A lot of local custom and culture that, was very foreign to Dave, my co-founder, and I. So, we were learning really quickly. And then, of course, there are layers of bureaucracy with government and needing to go through certain approval processes in order to operate in Uganda from both the Ministry of Education and then also for the construction itself. So, it was really an awakening time where we were coming across kind of roadblock or after roadblock. But again, at the age of 22, I don't think, you have anything much more than a bit of naivety and passion to drive you and to keep you going. And, we sort of kept on just overcoming the next hurdle as it came our way. But yeah, we're really, I guess, surprised by the number of challenges that we would need to kind of overcome to get the schools up and running.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing story I found to write because it is the story of a young woman, setting out to build a school initially, just one and to do the right thing. But there are all these obstacles in there. There are people flat out asking for bribes, as you said, there's all sorts of challenges to overcome. It's quite an adventurous story. And I guess how did your family feel with you going off to do all these things as a 21-year-old, and even in your early 20s as you carried on? What
I
was
mean,
the view of people back home?
and you'll see in the book if you get a chance to read it. I'm a sheep and cattle farmer's daughter. I grew up in a very small town in country New South Wales. So, it was such a shock for my family to have their daughter come home and say that she wanted to build a school in Uganda. And of course, they were, wanting to be supportive, but also quite in disbelief that this would even ever come to fruition. So we faced some of our own battles in terms of, me using my law skills purposefully and to pursue a career that, was commercial enough, but also I think just genuine concern for my safety, which, now as a parent, I totally understand. At the time when I was 22, I thought mum and dad were being, controlling. But now I go, I'd probably be terrified too if my little girls decided to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, often say to people when I sit down to write a book with them, and this is sort of the 11th or nearly 12th one of these that I've done, is we got to start somewhere interesting. If you come to me and say, oh, I had a pretty ordinary childhood and it was nice, we'll say, okay, we can forget that. But your childhood was nice. You had a loving family, which is great. But we did work it into the book because I think your schooling, your time at school, the influence of people like your mum, who is your teacher, and your granny, who's a very strong character, your Granny Jill, your childhood, I think is fair to say, did help shape the not just the person you became, but the direction you took in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And those influences come through the book and then, going to a very small school that really prioritized community service and giving back and really rewarded and acknowledged that, I think was a very strong character shaper for me. I got a lot of joy out of helping other people. I saw in my grandmother somebody who fought tirelessly for the rights of people with disabilities. And so definitely, those all of those influences shaped where I got to with School for Life. And then obviously, that catalytic moment of going to Tanzania to see another Australian woman who had done a remarkable thing there. And she really showed me what was possible. And so provided that kind of, a mentorship and guidance to help bring School for Life to life as well.
But it grew very quickly, didn't it? I think
Yeah.
as you see in the story, the story has what we call a dramatic arc as you move through, and it's not just Annabelle builds a school, the school opens, that's it, the end of the story. No, because then these young people that you're educating and really sort of giving a leg up and at the same time helping their community, their needs grow. They now need to go to a high school, so you end up having to build a high school. And then you uncover more problems in the communities, and with the support of the community, you need to address those. And
Yeah.
then COVID comes along. So again, without giving away the whole story, just did you? Let me ask it as a question: did you expect when you and your co-founder set out to build a primary school that it would go as far as it has today?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, people say, oh, what did your business plan look like? I mean, our business plan was to build a school for some kids. Like there was no, really, well-engineered business plan, but we never expected the number of lives, change to be as many as they are. I never ever expected the operational complexity. It's gotten to a point now where absolutely nothing surprises me anymore because I just get dealt so many, sort of different challenges to navigate. But yeah, I think, hopefully this is just the beginning as well of kind of creating a model that can be replicated across other areas of Africa and, throughout Uganda as well.
And so we have Katuso Primary School, we've got the Mbazi Riverside Primary School and High School.
Yeah.
And I think you've got another high school coming in the wings. Is that right? Coming
Yeah,
online?
so there's another one in master planning at the moment. Should be done with master planning this week. So we'll go to construction and it's scheduled all going to plan to open 1st of February 2028. So that'll be a high school and technical vocational training centre. What we've experienced through the last few years is that we need to prepare our graduates for the jobs that are available in the job market. It's an amazing thing to have an education and to change a child's life, but what you don't want to do is provide them with an education that's not going to lead to any opportunity. So what we're finding is to have two kind of streams, one going in more that higher education, more tertiary pathways, and then the other towards more of the technical trade type training where they can get jobs directly in their local communities as well. So, really trying to provide as much support as possible to help get these kids out of poverty for good.
Yeah, and as well as being your story and the story of your supporters, I do want to touch on in a second. It's obviously the story of the kids themselves, the graduates, and we're at a point now where those first little kids that went to your first primary school are now finished equivalent of Australian Year 12 or South African matric, and they're entering university and entering the workforce. And as I said, I was lucky enough to go to Uganda and meet some of these students whose personal stories feature
Mm.
in the book, sometimes quite harrowing, their experiences and what they've had to overcome in their family lives and personal lives. But one thing that struck me, if there was one thing I could use to sum up the graduates from School for Life in Uganda, if it was one word, it would be confidence. And so
Mm.
what we have here is young people who have not only received a very good education, like a first class education, and I think you've said yourself in the book that School for Life is sure, of course, it exists to educate, but it's not just about chasing the highest marks and the top percentiles and things. Your students are coming out, what's the best way for me to say it, as wonderfully
Mm.
confident young people, well-rounded people with a wonderful attitude towards life. So tell us a little bit what your philosophy was within the school and educating those kids.
Yeah, great question. And it really gets to the heart of the model because I think, at times the Ugandan curriculum can feel a little outdated. And albeit that some curriculum development has taken place over the recent years, our ambition has really been to develop skills and capabilities within these young people and character for them to stand out. And so parts of that is communication, teamwork, leadership, problem solving, critical and creative thinking, and then, of course, digital literacy. They're all the sorts of skills that we as employers look for when we're hiring in the modern workforce. A lot of what the Ugandan curriculum was delivering in the same way as Australia, to be honest. Like it's definitely not just a Ugandan only problem, but a lot of it was kind of content heavy that was more reliant on, I guess, a rote learning methodology. And playing to get grades in the system. Now they've got to get grades in the system to get through the system, and then of course to get the grades to go into university. But what we're really hoping to do is put a scaffold of kind of extra and co-curricular support around the students, like sport, drama, music, dance, chess, for example. All of these sorts of activities help to build their confidence, help them to, be ready to kind of take a job with two hands, to put themselves forward, to lead teams, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's certainly working, whatever it is. I mean, I meet these young people. I met them in Kampala, and I thought I would give you a job tomorrow if you walked
Yeah,
into
they're
mine, if I
amazing.
was hiring. I mean, and they really are a cut above many other young people that I've come across. It's certainly working there. Tell us about your supporters, the people that keep the engine running, the people in Australia and around the world, and I guess your approach into how you look for supporters or build relationships with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deeply relationship focused business. So I guess my experience of traditional fundraising has been quite negative, and I think probably the Australian population's feeling about fundraising is quite negative. And so I really looked to kind of break that mold by creating something that was far more reciprocal. What I want people to feel is connected to the impact that they're having and appreciated. I think just a small thank you goes a long way. I think there's a lot of times that I'll hear in the industry, oh, I gave X and I never even heard thank you. So we try to get some of those, just basic foundation parts right. And then we try to take the donors on a journey to ensure that they really feel connected to the impact that they're having. And hopefully it becomes much more like they're part of a community than that they're just giving to something. Look, we've had supporters now. There's a woman that's featured in the book. She's been supporting, she was our first supporter. We're now, into our 18th year. She's been supporting ever since. And so hopefully our stewardship techniques are powerful, and people really feel that through School for Life, they can make a tangible difference.
Yeah, look, it's a fantastic story. I'm a little bit biased by saying it's a great book. If you hunt around in there in the first page, you will find my name in there somewhere. It says it's written with me. But Annabelle's been very gracious in acknowledging the fact that we worked together on the book. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I think all my readers, certainly with anyone with an interest in the continent of Africa, or anyone just with an interest in education and kids and philanthropy and doing good, it's definitely a book worth reading. And I think also, if you, as I said before, if you're interested even in getting involved in that space, there's a lot of really good lessons in there. Annabelle, where can people learn more about School for Life?
Yeah, feel free to jump onto our website. It's www.schoolforlife.org.au.
And let's see that book again. Hold it up. It'll
Yes,
be nice and cheesy there.
there you
School
go.
for Life by Annabelle Chauncy with Tony
It's
Park.
Tony
Go
Park. By
do
Tony
yourself a
Park
favour.
with Annabelle Chauncey.
Uh, after you've bought your copy of King of Beasts, if you've got
Exactly.
any money left, there we go, buy a copy of School
Exactly.
for Life. And
Yeah.
keep an eye out for where Annabelle, have a look on the website. And if you do get a chance to see her speak, she's a very dynamic, very engaging public speaker as well, too. Annabelle, it's been wonderful chatting to you yet again, and all the
Thank,
best with the book.
thank you so much, Tony. Really appreciate it.